Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TC Talk, back today with another video. And in today's video we're going to be doing part 1 of our How to Ira series. This is going to be about a 7 or 8 part series talking about Ira from start to finish. We're going to talk about the lore of Ira, why you should play her competitively, and then also kind of have her background so you can get a little bit more tied to the character. We're going to talk about archetypes, deck building principles, play lines like 2-card combos, 3-card combos, 4-card combos, all that kind of stuff, right? We're going to go over 7 videos talking about her as in-depth as I can so both new players and entrenched players can understand the hero holistically and hopefully have a good resource to get involved with the hero. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hopefully you enjoy your stay. If you're a long-standing supporter, thank you so much as always. Feel free to check out everything down below. We'll get right into it. So these are going to be very conversational. I definitely want to give you as much info as I can. The one kind of like reminder I want to give people is I am one player, right? I have, today's video is more fun. It's going to talk about the lore of Ira and like why you should play her. And that's pretty, cut and dry for the most part. But when we start getting into like deck building principles and ways that I play her, like we're going to talk about the Flick Knives version. We're going to talk about the more mid-range Shuko version, so to speak. But I'm just one person, so I have my thoughts on how the hero can be played and should be played, but I'd love to hear anyone's feedback for who has had success on the hero. She definitely has a lot more depth to her now with the release of the Hunted than she did before. Before was pretty there, but we'll get into that in a later video. Today is about the lore and about why you should play Ira. So I have some notes over here on the right, so if you see my eyes like go over, it's because I'm trying to reference them, because I wanted to kind of, she has 2 or 3 lore articles which I'm going to link down below. Definitely go check them out, but I wanted to kind of give you like a brief overview on like where she comes from and her whole story, so you can try to get tied to the character a little bit more. So I thought that'd be really cool, and there's some artwork in our cards that kind of support some of this. So the first one is Ira is from Mysteria. She's born in the Valley of Blossoms. So the Valley of Blossoms is a part of the House of Blossom. In Mysteria, there's different houses. You have McGinty, you have the House of the Blossoms. There's like different houses that specialize in different types of, I guess, martial arts, so to speak. You have the Way of the Hand and like all these other different ones. But she's from the House of the Blossoms. She is the youngest child of the Ikaru clan, right? So her house is the House of Blossoms. Her clan is called the Ikaru clan. It's a prestigious house in Mysteria, amongst others. And basically, she's a younger sister and close to her 2 brothers. And the first part of the lore article talks about her growing up, and she's very, adventurous, and she's always getting into trouble and things like that. And she always goes up to this shrine that her family has, where there's this big sword, right? And it's the Edge of Autumn, which is Ira's signature weapon. Most people, look at Kadachi's with Ira, as they should, but her signature weapon technically is Edge of Autumn. In the Ira Welcome decks, which was the first decks ever released in the game, if you're not aware, Ira was the first hero ever in the game. She was just in a young version of her. She was kind of the hero that you learn the game on. She has +1 to her second attack at all times, so each turn. So she's very much like value driven and kind of does a good job at teaching you the blocking, attacking, and kind of the push and pull of the game. So all I have to say, the Edge of Autumn is her signature weapon, because you'd start with the Edge of Autumn, paying a resource for 1 go again, and then you'd attack with another attack, and that would get +1, so on and so forth. But the Edge of Autumn was up in a shrine, and she always tried to get this Edge of Autumn sword, but never could growing up. It was always, for some reason or another, couldn't quite grab it or couldn't quite like mess with it like she wanted to as a kid. However, one night, as she grew up, these only described as grotesque creatures came from the ground and attacked her village, and they massacred her family and her clan. It's called the Night of the Dark Tide. 8 houses were wiped out during this night, so it wasn't just the House of Blossoms. It was a bunch of other houses, right? And there's no artwork to support what they look like, but they are described as like coming from the ground. So whether it could be like a necromancer or a rune blade or whatever the case may be, hopefully we'll get necromancer at some point and kind of get a little more lore on that. But regardless, it was called the Night of the Dark Tide. 8 houses were wiped out. And her two brothers, she has two brothers. One is Shi Ling, and then one is Jing. Were trying to protect her. Shi Ling ends up dying in that monster attack. He ends up trying to save his brother and sister, and in the process dies. Jing ends up grabbing Ira and going up to the house where the Edge of Autumn is at. Not quite the next one yet, but where the Edge of Autumn is at, and Ira ends up grabbing the Edge of Autumn finally and making it her own. It kind of calls out to her. As she grabs the Edge of Autumn, this like back door kind of opens up, and they're able to escape while a monster's trying to fight them. And because of all that, as she's grown up, she's kind of like, I'm assuming like a young adult at this point, she found what's called the Crimson Haze Rebels. So the Crimson Haze Rebels are a bunch of kind of survivors from that Night of the Dark Tide from various houses, and their whole sole purpose is to get revenge. They want to find out all of the monsters who are responsible for this, all the people who are responsible for this, and get vengeance on them. And Ira turns into like this sick, not sick like gross, but sick like cool, just like badass, frankly. She is like, doesn't care at all, crazy, like just gnarly person, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But as she founds the Crimson Haze Rebels, Jing goes with her initially, but Jing ends up leaving her finally via a note. He leaves a note under her pillow because he wants to go back home and try to rebuild their clan. He doesn't want to continue this quest for vengeance, and he tells Ira that he thinks that he's lost the sister that he knew, and he ends up going home. So that's how that goes, and that's kind of where the first lore article ends. The second one starts with them stalking the creatures from that night, right? They've been stalking them for years. Ira is at the entrance to the Chrome Caverns, which is in Volcor. If you go look at the Flesh and Blood lore map, it's not too far from Mysteria. They're pretty close. And as they're sitting at the front of that, this monster like shrieks out from behind them, which in the lore article is shown as the Shrill of Skull form, a rune blade attack action. But Shrill of Skull form comes out from behind the caverns and basically like challenges them. They try to flank it. A couple of the Crimson Haze Rebels try to flank it, end up dying. It's very quick and very fast. But Ira ends up killing it after a little bit of a battle, and this is where like the gnarly side of Ira comes out. She like plunges the Edge of Autumn into the shoulder and then rips it down the creature's back, and she asks the creature like, if you tell me where the rest of these monsters are, I'll kill you quick. If not, you're gonna die slowly. And the monster just laughs at her, and so she like slowly kills, like it says flaying the skin from the monster, so as you can see, pretty gnarly here. And she kills it slowly and then picks it up, cuts off the head, and picks it up by the eye sockets. Again, really cool how they did the lore article and showed like Ira's just ruthlessness. But she ends up, as an adult, seeing dreams of her and Jing as adults being attacked by these monsters at the villages, right? And she knows that the House of Blossoms are calling back to her to come back for whatever reason. So she ends up leaving her clan in the night by herself to go back to Mysteria, and she brings back the same monster that she killed, just the head on her hilt, like on her side, to like guide her. I guess it's like guiding her to where the other monsters are. But she ends up going back to the House of Blossoms where it was at least at, and at this point it's like this overgrown forest type thing. Like no one lives there. It's just kind of creatures around, and she finds this trap door where in one of the old rooms that I guess her family was in, and she notices that there's this like inscription on the door, and she's never seen this door before, and she's really confused by it because she was adventurous as a kid. And it basically says her parents are saying to her and her brothers to stop the darkness that they could not. And when she reads that, she realizes that her parents sacrificed themselves with whatever is in that trap door in order to like contain it, while her and her brothers, I guess, got the strength to fight it. So when she opens the trap door, consuming volition, or it's described as the monster in the background consuming volition, and it shows the artwork, so we're assuming it is this one, pops out, and a fight appears. Basically, consuming volition in the battle uses like I don't know if they're real. It's never like explicitly said if it's actually their bodies or if it's kind of like apparitions that it uses to trick its like the people it's fighting. But during the fight, her brother pops out of consuming volition, like the body, and says like, why did you let me die? And is basically like throws Ira off into like a mental spiral, so to speak. As Ira is about to die from the monster, Jing appears and saves Ira, and is able to help defeat consuming volition. And during that battle, actually, both of her parents appear as bodies out of consuming volition, and just like, again, the monster is trying to throw them off. But during that apparition, I don't know if this is true. I think it is true, because Jing even talks about it afterwards. But the monster, through the parents, and I think the parents are like the dead bodies of the parents at this point, revealed that another clan called the Ori Scales, I hope I'm saying that correctly. I think it's referenced in this artwork here in Breaking Scales, but the Ori Scales, because it says Jing is dressed in the scales, in the dress of the scales, basically reveals that they were the engineers of the clan's death. They were the ones who were allowed passage through Mysteria into Solana, and somehow were linked to the Night of the Dark Tide. Regardless, they're like partially or fully responsible for the clan's death. And the problem is Jing is now a part of that clan in order to try to protect Mysteria. He's like a spy master. So it's kind of in the moment, nothing happens like as far as a disagreement or fight between the brother and sister, between Ira and Jing, but it's just revealed that, right? So Ira ends up killing the monster after a gnarly... LSS is crazy for this. Apparently, after the parents stopped talking, after coming out of the consuming volition body, and then telling their kids this, like about the Ori Scales, like being the traitors, so to speak, the father then crushes the mother's head, like turns to the mother and crushes her head, and then the bodies like go back into the monster. Anyway, Ira ends up killing the monster, and having a discussion with Jing, basically saying that she's going to continue doing her thing and, you know, have revenge on her family. Jing said that he's going to go back to the scales and figure out, you know, who the culprit is and who the corrupt people were, and take care of it that way. And then it goes into Iris continuing to have this revenge, right? But in this, that's like the base of the whole. There's some other little tidbits in the article, right? She's talking to different people, but that's kind of like the quick synopsis version of the lore. Really, really cool. So Ira is just this revenging badass. She came out at Worlds last year as like a promo, the adult version of her. And again, her ability is arguably the most simple ability in the game. Her second attack each turn gets +1. So Ira's whole thing is she uses that +1 to get incremental value over her opponents. And she uses cards like Flick Flack, which is really good defensive tools, in order to have both offensive and defensive value over her opponent, and eventually just whittle them down and beat them. She also can have cards like Command and Conquer, like cards with on hits, cards like Censor, cards like Erase Face, all these cards that normally come in for 5 or 6. Well, if there's a second attack for Ira, they come in for 6 or 7. So like on a normal 2-card play with a blue and Command and Conquer, you can Kadachi for 1 and then Command and Conquer for 7. And anyone who's played this game longer than a couple games knows Command and Conquer for 7 is a lot worse than Command and Conquer for 6. So she uses these things to get incremental value. She's very consistent, and some of the new tools from the Hunted allow her to have a little bit more offensive firepower than she used to have. Iris' kind of weakness, and it was mainly in Blitz and when she first came out in CC, is that yes, she's very consistent and she does get that incremental value, but she also is kind of limited in what she can do on 2, 3, 4, and 5 card hands. She's only going to do it so much damage. But with some of these additional abilities, stuff like up sticks and run, dual threat, things of that nature, she's able to really kind of just add on to her offensive firepower. It used to be like a really good 3-card turn for her was 11 damage. Now you can have 3-card 12, 3-card 13s, which 1 or 2 value is a lot in Flesh and Blood. She used to get like 4-card 16s. Now she can get like 4-card 18s, and her 5-card hands can go over 20 depending on your hand structure. So really, really good. If you want a hero that's very consistent, very simple to understand, will allow you to learn the fundamentals of Flesh and Blood very well by attacking, blocking, value trading, gain incremental value over time. She was the opening deck in Flesh and Blood that people learn to play the game on for a reason, right? So she's also very strong in the meta right now. At the time of recording this is in March of 2025. So if you're watching this like 6 to 9 months from now, maybe it's a little bit different, or a year from now. However, in the current meta, she's very strong. I would put her as like a tier 2 deck. She's not quite like tier 1, but I think 1 right now in the current meta post Viserai, I think she's, even in the last week of RTN season, I think she's a little bit underplayed in my opinion, or underutilized. However, regardless, she has a really good matchups into a lot of different heroes. She only has a couple like choice bad matchups. Her main bad matchup is any two-handed warrior that uses Valiant Dynamos that can match her incremental value, so to speak. She can struggle a little bit into heroes like Aurora with that split damage. Viserai was her biggest challenge though, and now she can not have to worry about that as much. So a very good hero if you want a hero that's very solid in the meta. There are budget versions of her as well. I'm going to be going over those in this How to Ira series, kind of talk about it. But she uses a lot of generic cards on top of ninja cards. It can be an expensive deck to build like most meta decks in the game, but she does have budget versions that still feel very powerful. So we'll go over those once I get to the archetypes and deck archetypes and deck building and deck techs. But hopefully you enjoyed this. Again, this was just kind of giving you an introduction to who she is, kind of talk about the lore. The lore is not talked about enough in this game. LSS is doing a lot better job at coming out with lore articles, so definitely check those out down below if you want more guidance on that. You can go to either the Flesh and Blood website, or you can go to legendarystories.net, and I'll link that down below. They do an amazing job at compiling all of the lore that that each hero has and then the game has, as well as adding on to it based off stuff they find. But yeah, hope you all enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. If not me, it's completely fine. Go to our creator, leave a like, comment, subscribe on their stuff. Let's get more people seeing this game, and I'll see you all next time on TC Talk. Thank y'all so much.